Hello and welcome to ClapperCast. I'm your host as always, Carson Timar, and today I'm once again joined by Mr. Editor-in-Chief Jak-Luke Sharp as we sit down to review Porco Rosso, one of the most interesting and unique films from Miyazaki's career. This is absolutely one of my favorite films from all of Studio Ghibli, and today we discuss why this is such a special film, from the personal connections to Miyazaki's past to stories of the rise of fascism and the political takes within the film. This is a really, really wonderful episode and for a really, really wonderful film. Thank you so much for listening, and without further ado, let's get to our review of Porco Rosso. Okay, and continuing our Miyazaki series, I'm so happy, Jack, you could join us today for Porco Rosso. I'm very excited against this. It's one of probably Miyazaki's more interesting features for a variety of reasons. But before I give my thoughts, I would love, Jack, you are you're not necessarily the most big into anime, most big into Miyazaki. We talked about this previously with Grave of the Fireflies. So I would love to get kind of your opening thoughts. How did you feel, I believe, on your first time watch of Porco Rosso?
Yes, I would call myself like a Studio Ghibli's virgin almost. Like I think we've done Grave of the Fireflies, and I think I'm going to go on. I'm going to be on the next one that we're going to do as well because I missed that when it originally released in the UK. I couldn't get a streaming of it, and I'll let everyone else guess what that's going to be. But except for Grave of the Fireflies and probably a few others down the line, I mean like one or two, and I couldn't probably remember the rest. Going on this podcast is more educational for me as well. Like just listening to you. So what you've done on the Miyazaki seasons really helped me as well because I've been listening going to and back from work. It's been really educational. Found it really informative. So I thought, well, I'll get myself on one of them. I didn't. I went in completely blind on this. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know how long it was. It was just a spur of the moment. If you would have me, you said yes. He still lets me on the podcast. Everyone, I'm out of jail now. So I was like, oh, this is going to be really interesting. The first thing I can know, obviously, this is completely blind into this. I knew nothing of this. Um, this might be one of the most visually breathtaking films I have ever seen. This is visually poetic. It is stunning, absolutely stunning. And every so often, because I have major gaps here, like I don't watch a Studio Ghibli film for years or so on and so forth. And every time I come back to this, it is just so sweeping to see the beauty in this. And then the story comes secondary to me. Like I'm just so enamored with the visual element here. And throughout this, it's just absolutely stunning. So that's number one for me. It's like, oh my god, this is breathtaking. And then getting into the film, bear in mind you're going to be so much better to discuss this than I am. But this felt like a departure of story for Miyazaki because I've looked at like quite Japanese centric political, social, religious elements. This one feels like, oh, because I didn't know what this was about. I was shocked it was in Italy, in Milan. I was shocked that the characters and the setting was very far removed from what I've understood. So I'd love to get your knowledge on that after this. But I was shocked by this. It definitely feels like because I've read a little bit about this afterward, just so I can have some context. And I remember it was meant to be a 40-minute short for Japanese Airlines. I don't know if it's ANA or Japan Airlines. I'm not too sure. And you can tell that it's very much there's like a good 50 minutes here of just really good story, and then this happens, and this happens, and that's nothing to be detract from the actual story. But it's very emotive. It's very quite poignant, very very pretty, incredibly immersive, full of character, full of whimsical nature. And I know that he's not Miyazaki on retrospect is not particularly fond of this. And I was shocked. This film's from 1993. Wow. I was thinking I was going to come out with this later, but I feel like I'm going to drop the bombshell now. I think, bar the early 30s, 40s, 50s, and maybe 60s work of Disney's animation, I don't think anything touches Studio Ghibli. And I've only seen 4 or 5, maybe 4 features. No, nothing touches this. The art form is incredible to watch. It's just like, do you know? I know I'm on the classic like going on here, but I thought to myself after viewing this, this is from 1993. If we were in that era then, we wouldn't probably have seen this film. We wouldn't have seen the beauty of it. We would perhaps maybe have seen it on a VHS if we were diehard fans, or we'd traveled to Japan. But the limited release you would have had of this maybe would have been perhaps from the Weinstein Company. It'd have been. I'm also going to reveal something in a minute later on about whether I watched it dubbed, because I know that's a point of contention. But we wouldn't have seen this. And just watching the beauty of it, like what a missed opportunity to look at the Disney work from the '90s, which is all into like the 3D animated stuff. It gets into the 3D stuff with Bug's Life and so on and so forth, and the first Toy Story. But then you watch this, and it's just absolutely breathtaking. So I thought this experience was outstanding. I loved it, and I did watch it dubbed. I watched it in English dubbed because I love trying to listen to who these people actually are. And I could only guess one of them, but I think it was Michael Keaton. I'm not too sure. I haven't got a different knowledge of it. But I'd love to know your opinion on this. But this was as a blind watch an hour and 33 minutes. Terrific. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it always helps with the dubs that they have such a strong ensemble of like real
Mm.
good actors who are really performing. I'm gonna be honest, this is one of my favorite Miyazaki films, especially rewatching it today. Really kind of fell in love with this one. A very, very complex feature. I think overly complex than it even appears on the outside. Because on the outside, as you mentioned, was going to be a 40-minute short. I think it is a film that really is just so much fun. These worlds are fun to live in. These characters are over the top. They're exciting. They have this really charming and likable energy. The plot itself, as you mentioned, is very straightforward. It's very simple, leading to basically a third act comedic climax where it's nothing overly serious that this film is overtly presenting you a lot of the time, but then buried within is this really, really, I thought to be very poignant look at fascism, at the rise of fascism. Very similar to Better Man from last year. You have this concept where he's this animal and it's kind of this quirky little thing and you don't really mention it, but then they eventually reveal kind of even more subtly kind of the reasons and what that politically means for this character and how he interacts with the world around him, the fact that he's not willing to buy into the system. As you mentioned, the animation is maybe some of Ghibli's best, at least some of Ghibli's most overlooked work. The flying scenes and the earth is just moving past them. It is just genuinely stunning. It genuinely creates goosebumps. Some of the dog fights in this, it truly is a work of art. But I think the biggest thing for me is just the characters. These are fantastic, fantastic characters. And it's interesting because it started kind of as seemingly maybe Miyazaki even just kind of writing his own fan fiction about when this was just meant to be light and fun. And apparently Miyazaki always referred to himself behind the scenes as the pig, and that's like how he refers to himself. Of just imagining him as this pilot, going and fighting pirates off the coast of Italy. You also have weird connections to his family here. Ghibli is the nickname of the plane that is used in this. You have Miyazaki, his like direct lineage, built planes for World War II and has had this long history of aviation combat. So there's little bits there. But then during production, you also cannot overlook, and I'm not trying to go full like history lesson here, but the Yugoslav war hits directly in this area that this film is supposed to be taking place in. So you have a little bit of context there as far as some of the deeper themes. This is kind of like how I view, and Miyazaki often, I think, when you look at him and you look at his best work, it often gets very fantastical. You think of Princess Mononoke, Nausicaa, Totoro, these mythical creatures and reflecting on the relationship with nature a lot of the time. This is very different than that, and it's so much more grounded. It's so much more based in humanity, other than the fact that he's a pig in it. That's really the only bit here that's a mythical curse or anything like that. But I found there's so many lines here, and the directing is also great. You have some great use of lighting, of color. It's a genre piece in a lot of ways. Like this really, for me, I agree with you that it feels like a big departure for Ghibli. It feels like a big departure from Miyazaki. And it's not one that I think they ever return to. Miyazaki did say he wanted to make a sequel to this eventually. It doesn't look like it's ever going to happen. I would have been fascinated to see. But I think it's one that's so, so rewarding, so watchable. I really love this. It really is, I think, one of my favorite Miyazaki's, which is a big statement to say because he makes some great films. But I
Yeah,
really appreciated this. Did you know you could be listening to this episode of ClapperCast early? Well, if you go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/ClapperCast podcast, there are 3 different tiers that you can choose from, each with their own means of support and each with their own means of rewards. You can get access to early episodes, bonus monthly episodes, bonus reviews. You can see our schedule early. Of course, thank you everyone who's already joined us on Patreon, and we hope to see you over there soon.
Yeah, is this a first? Is this a few times you've seen this then?
This is my second time.
Oh wow, okay. So it's interesting because obviously within the context of the podcast and in my personal life anyway, the last few Studio Ghibli films I've just seen The Go of the Fireflies with you and Hillary on that podcast, and then now, so I've seen that sort of this detachment of the fantastical elements because I've seen Ponyo before, and I'm sure I've seen My Neighbor Totoro, and I'm sure I've seen Howl the Moving Castle. I'm sure that those are the 4 I've seen. I may have seen a little bit of the Red Turtle, maybe a few minutes, but I've probably seen another few as well. But the ones that recently I've seen are very much pushed back into the realism, the darkness about it. So I do feel like I'm wanting to push the boundary next time, and again, that's why I've wanted to go for the next film we're gonna watch as well, just because I want to see something a bit more fantastical from the Miyazaki studio. But it is interesting. This and Grave of the Fireflies look at 2 very troubling, poignant, and quite dark underbellies of torment and trying to push through the world while the world is almost sort of like stopped, not revolving anymore. It's very like quite difficult themes, and the always interesting aspect of it is I think what the early Disney films, or particularly throughout Disney's lifespan, have failed to do is they've failed to sort of give incredibly dark. Not I wouldn't say incredibly dark because that's not unrewarding. It's not like pessimism or nihilism. It's just a very frank examination of the world that people live in, and then curate that into a visual medium that adults can enjoy and children can enjoy. And I think Disney, to a certain degree, with the old like fabled tales like the Snow Whites and stuff, and I'm sure there's something in there, but it's very much detached now. It feels very much forced. Where there's something so romanticized about the 2 of what I've watched, where they hit really hard. There's a scene in here where the character, the pig, is reminiscing about like a backstory in a flashback, and not only is it like very difficult to watch for a multitude of reasons, but you've got this genuinely breathtaking piece of animation, breathtaking, where all the planes are flying, and it's like this. There's this literal and figurative approach of going above and beyond the sky. That's where they belong, and he left those people there, and he thinks he's a fraud, and he thinks he's a coward, and he's detailing the story, and obviously the dub works fantastic, and it's just delivered with so much sentiment, and it's just one of those 2 where the visual and audible things just go into one, and I'm watching it there, and it's so strange because watching that sequence, I could just feel like watching The Fifth Element. Like it was just like I was like watching just something visually completely distinctive to what I've ever seen before. It almost went science fiction to me. Like it just felt like what, and we go into this landscape of, and not to repeat, but genuine beauty on screen with so many layers and it's very much like the Japanese method of having um, nuance and on the nose emotional conversations, isn't it? It's a wonderful concoction of both of them. But there's so many moments like that, and it reminded me of Indiana Jones. It's like there's so many genres here. It touches upon, and it's whimsical, and it's quite poignant again, and it's somewhat profound, but it's deeply entertaining, and it has all these emotions running through it, and it just, like Grave of the Fireflies, it just matches with something, a certain precedent, not even at the time, but relevant. Obviously, there's a conflict at the time going on there, which we felt, it felt incredibly rich to talk about, because it just felt like you're seeing things in the news and you're seeing that, and then you look at this and the rise of fascism and so on and so forth. I can only think you've chosen this purely by coincidence. I'm hoping anyway. I hope it's not fitting into your subconscious, because that would worry for me. But no, that there is a seemingly almost 30 years, and it's just it's quite frightening, and the fascism, you can't outrun it. The guy's got a plane, and he can't outrun his past, and there's going to be a few more afterwards. And it's just, and then at the time in '93, you have the Balkan Wars again, like which that was quite famous for the British going over as well. There's a lot there, and I think it's a product of its environment of that happening by proxy, and I also think there's a quite dark and fitting circumstance of that this could be in 1953, and the things that it produces are going to be very much poignant to come forward in the future. It is a lot less darker than Grave of the Fireflies, and I think it's a lot less bitter. And I don't mean that to be a nasty statement. But I do think there's a wonderful joyous part of it. The colours pop like so much, and I think it's one of those great things where you're watching something and I think it works on the. And not to sound really strange here, but when you watch it, you become one with the image, and colours bleed into each other, and the voice the characters talk, and it just bleeds into one another, and you're just watching this one thing. It's not a separate concoction of animation style meets dub, and then you have score and stuff like that. It just feels so well melded together. It's one of those things where it just feels like a wonderful artistic piece. Yeah, it's an incredibly like rich experience, and I do think the dub works wholeheartedly. There's one thing I did want to mention though, and I cannot give this as much credit as it does. When we first go to the hotel, the bar, and Clifton, the not the villain, let's say, the
The
antagonist of the piece.
American
Yeah,
pilot.
the American, the loud pressure man. I'm going to make a movie. I'm going to star in it. Like which I thought was quite funny. But there's a piece where he flies over, and you see it coming down from the sky, and it's again one of many pieces. Comparison to the other one where we get to the flashback, which I think is truly magnificent. But you watch it and you see the tranquility of the water, and I want to eat that image. Like I want to be that image. Like I want to. I can feel the heat on the water. I can feel the coolness of it. I can feel that the shade, and I can smell the flowers, and it's so rich and detailed, and I'm watching it on a big television, and it's so absorbing, and again, it just shows how skilled Miyazaki is in the house that he belongs with, Studio Ghibli, in that this is an animation house where you can't get anything past them. Like you just can't. They can do anything at this point. Like the multitude of flavors and genres. It's just I'm staggered to know that you can go from this to Grave of the Fireflies. I'm staggered that that's the same people. That's the same type of production house. And it's not a knock on anyone else, but I think it's just one of the things where I was shocked to know of how good this was. And it's a film that I like you. I think you mentioned that it feels not understated, but it definitely feels like one of the smaller ventures, which is strange because I don't know. This is what I'll probably ask you. Do you find that Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli by proxy it's sort of more into a fantasy element now? Do you find that it's more sort of like that, or do you find that the more not refrained, but the more human-like narratives and ventures are more secondary to the fantasy epics?
I would say so. I think it's also a curious conversation on like how audiences perceive the two of them, because it's not like they've never made another grounded film. With The Wind Rises was very, very grounded. Um, and it's not like this film did bad. This film, for the longest time, up until like Mononoke time, was the number one film in Japanese box office history. So it's not like the films did bad, so they kind of shove them under the rug. But like with all the iconography they pushed, I've never seen them push a Porco Rosso piece of iconography, or Grave of the Fireflies. And we talked about that actually deeply with our Grave of the Fireflies episode, which if you watched, or if you haven't seen rather, I'd recommend you go listen to. But I definitely think they've curated, and also I think though, like with Western ideals, I think the West was Weinstein especially was very hesitant to push some of these more serious themes. So I guess it makes sense on like a global perspective why you put Totoro first, or why you put these fantastical creatures first. You can obviously sell more toys. But I also think that it's been a part of the studio and it still is. The Red Turtle's mythical, but it feels more grounded than a lot of their work. So I guess it's always been there. I think for me, you mentioned the stillness on the water in that scene. For me, there's this really weird thing that happened when they went to Italy and he's just like washing his face. There's just these people outside where I genuinely felt like I forgot I was watching an animated film, which sounds really, really silly because it's obviously animated. There's a giant pig on screen, but all these community members come in. You have the grandmas there who are kissing him. Like for me, it just felt like it transcended like animation, and it truly felt like I was just like watching life on screen, which was a very weird emotion to have.
Wow.
Miyazaki said in an interview at some point that his goal, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that he wanted like a world that you felt you could live in, characters you felt like you could know, a bar you felt like you could have a drink in, skies you felt like you were flying through. And I think it really does work. Like it really is just a captivating film. I know there's been a few Miyazaki films to go back in theaters. I would love to see this on the big screen. Oh my
Oh
gosh,
wow.
imagine putting this in IMAX, or imagine putting this just on any screen, really. It just must be quite an experience. Um,
Have
but
you
yeah,
ever felt that? Sorry, have you ever felt
no,
that experience on another Miyazaki?
I don't think I ever have. I mean,
Wow.
again, some of them are very fantastical, so I appreciate that. But like, there was just something about it where it really felt just real to me. Um, Yeah, it was powerful. I think overall the film really balances well. And you mentioned, I mean, again, this is really fun. This is very watchable.
Mhm,
But there's also constant reminder of death at this bar that is so lived in and it's so joyful. And there's all these characters who are there and it's very fun. You have a woman whose every husband has died. There's a great scene of Porco Rosso right before he gives that memory that you said. He's just sitting in darkness on this beach at night, smoking a cigarette, and he's saying, "I'm not a hero. The good ones died," and that's something he says multiple times. There's so much deep morality here that you wouldn't, I don't think, at least I would expect, um, this complexity of character and complexity of morality from an animated feature at times, or even a Studio Ghibli feature. Um, but it has those conversations, and I think that's one of also the reasons this really transcends a lot for me, is just like I think that human element is so ambitious and it feels so mature, and it feels so, it doesn't necessarily have a great answer, it doesn't necessarily have this grand journey where he finally proves to himself he's the right person or the best person.
mhm.
He just lives by this morality, and just even like the framing of the shots again in the darkness, like it really worked for me in that way.
I mean, one positive I can give it that just goes on from you being enamored with the imagery is that I remember reading about, like he said, like his favorite dub was the French dub. Jean Reno does the main character, and I sort of thought about that, and again it sort of clicked. That is one of the most positive things you can give a film, and that you turn the music off or turn the sound off, and you can read the film by its images. And I think this, what it works so perfectly is that you don't, the imagery work, the iconography as well, but the imagery as well, the visual elements work so well. And yes, they are very archetype, but I think that's what you have to sort of do with animation, because it's so, it's not necessarily a lack of expression, but it's in a very tight frame. You can't give a multifaceted animation. In my opinion, 2D. I'm sure there's options. You'd be like, well, this and this, and I would agree. But I think I think it's a very difficult to do, to give this a very much multifaceted expression. And I think that when you watch this, you could probably let anybody record voiceover there. That's not to suggest that the people who are doing it in the Japanese, the American, and the French dub are doing it in any victorious or negative manner. But I just think that the images are so striking and so strong. You can read the film just by that. You could turn the song. Sorry, you could turn the music off in the cave and all the shadows come, and he reminisces about the flashback, and you could pick up every sentimental and poignant detail in that whole sequence, and you wouldn't even have to hear it. It is so intoxicating to watch. And I think that the American dub. Did you watch it dubbed, or not to pull you in here?
This time I watched it dubbed.
Yeah, I just thought I always watch the first time dubbed because I want to be able to hear it. I want to hear that. I want to not have to worry about subtitles. Not that I can't read them. I want to be completely enamored with that imagery, and I think it works. But I'd like to go back to the Japanese one and strangely not have it subtitled. just audio, and just listen to the richness of the sound, to listen to how high it gets, how gruff it gets, how tender, how quick, how slow. And I think everything here is just perfect. It's an art style which I'm surprised I don't watch enough of, because every time I'm on here, I'm particularly boastful about the fact that I think everything's amazing in it. And I think this is just another element of the studio house where I feel like if I watch all of them, because I think you've hit that point, haven't you, where there's a person creating these who is on a very slow down um, trajectory, although that's hit and miss on multiple occasions when he actually releases films. And watching these art pieces, it's difficult not to want to watch them all, and then you're not having anything. And I also think to that degree, there's nothing that replaces these. I don't think there is an art style better than this in film animation. I can't. Maybe the early Disney stuff, that your Cinderellas, your Snow Whites, yes, but this is just something else to me. It's so intoxicating, and it's funny watching this because I wasn't going to bring this up, but because I know that you and Nick were talking about this in the chat, and it was purely coincidental, and obviously these Studio Ghibli AI images are coming up, and it was just purely coincidental, and having watched this for the podcast, what are we doing? Like what are we doing? Like why are we trying to copy it? Like it just showcases that an artificial intelligence is trying to replicate the beauty of an artist and can't, pardon my French, fucking touch it. Can't tie its laces. Nothing that you can see now of what AI can do cannot accomplish a fraction of the skill in Miyazaki stuff here. And this is a feature that we're both on record of saying that it isn't pushed to be the magnum opus of the studio. It's one of the most probably underseen things, although it was highly successful. I don't doubt that. I can completely concur with that. But what a travesty that we're living in now, that we're trying to copy off an artist's beauty, and it can't do it. And we're still having this artist make these type of features. It just something like sort of shocked me when I was watching it. It was nothing can touch this. I don't care. Like in 10 years maybe, but it'll never be by a human. The fact that this man's history is in this film with the airline and the jet engines and stuff like that, and then having watched Godzilla -1 and not knowing but understanding the social dynamics of coming back from that war alive, which in Western civilization is you survive, you made it, you're the hero, and in the Eastern um, culture, coming back is almost like, well, you were a jet fighter, you shouldn't be here, you should have died for your country, and having to deal with that. It's interesting that you look at the morality of that and how Miyazaki plays that with the Italian thing, and then he's against the fascism, and that's why he won't fly with the Italians. It's just something about this where it just feels so energetic. It feels so full of life, and not to derail it to the AI conversation, which I feel like is bringing AI and Disney up and shitting on them both is a ClapperCast is a ClapperCast style for me. So I'll leave it there. But yeah, just untouchable and interesting. I would have been somewhat interested in a sequel. I think. It feels more like a serial TV
Yeah.
show. Did you not feel it felt like, you have three parts, three separate stories, and that's perhaps what it felt like in production. And I think he gets it together no problem. But yeah, it does feel like it does end on a comedic ending. But the one thing I wanted to mention you, which I thought was interesting, is that there's no antagonist here. There is, and there is political antagonism, and there's also social, and there's also partly patriarchal sort of antagonism. But there isn't one direct villain here, and even the villain towards the end is sort of just comes to be part of the group, and even the pirates, let's say, come a part of the group. It's an interesting aspect. Is that somewhat a Miyazaki staple, or do you feel like this is for this feature, or what's your opinion on that then?
I would say it's definitely a staple of his. I mean, so many of his films have this complexity where there's no bad guy, or there's no traditional villain that we need to defeat. There are people more directly than in this film in other features like Princess Mononoke or Nausicaa, who are making maybe poor decisions that we don't like the outcomes of their decisions, but they're not like this big bad evil person who's defeated. I would say it's definitely, there's a lot of nuance within his work, and I don't think he's someone who values that traditional plot structure of that you have to have a good guy, you have to have a bad guy. He's also not afraid to turn the main character, the protagonist, and look at his demons and look at his flaws and look at his cracks. Like, and I think that's one of the reasons so much of his work is kind of this indescribable feeling. Like when you watch Totoro, there's no bad guy. It's just these girls hanging out with this monster and life happens, right? Like that's all that happens in that film. But because he is so um unique in his voice and he's so successful in his voice, he slowly builds this world where so much more is happening on the surface. He's a filmmaker where so much more is always happening that it doesn't need this direction of you are the evil king that I need to dethrone and I need to destroy. I think that's one thing I love about him. I mean, as you mentioned with the AI, it's not just that AI can't do this. It's wild that humanity seemingly cannot produce another filmmaker like Miyazaki or another studio like Ghibli. And maybe that's also partly because just technology itself is changing even beyond AI to where you're not having these hand-drawn features that you're spending 5 years of your soul every day drawing these frames. You know, have someone like Miyazaki, who some of his features, he redraws 80% of the entire frames for the entire film himself. Like, it's just a magical combination. But like, even as someone who's explored the anime industry, and I love a lot of the anime industry, right? Like, we talked about Weathering with You. There's a lot of great stuff in there. There's nothing like it. And to think that AI can just like replicate that. And I think it's interesting also because I think it shows such a fundamental lack of understanding about like movies in general. This idea that if you just recreate the frame, if you just redraw a frame, that is all that is. All movies are just like the visualization of a frame when it's obviously so much more. I mean, even in here with Miyazaki Soul, you can view, maybe is this Miyazaki talking about himself in like opposition or in conversation with a changing world and changing anime industry, and he's the last one doing this. He's the pig in the situation. You have those universal themes really of being the last one or the only person in a situation who believes in a certain way, who's willing to fight with these core morals, who are not selling out. Like, there's just so much to each of his features, and again, it's like nobody. And it's tragic because we're coming at this where like we don't know, he might have released his last film, right? Just due to time. It's crazy that just like nobody can do this.
Yeah, two things on that. I think the first one is just about the antagonist. I think that's undoubtedly what sets this apart from the Disney stuff, and that's what you mentioned: bad guy, princess, castle, witch, demon, dragon. There's an idea or a sentimentality with a Disney feature that it's extremely splendid animation design, but the narrative is on fables, and the fables are very much almost not necessarily westernized, but it's almost like very straightforward. Live your life like this, black and white. There's very little grey area, which is as you get older becomes a massive aspect of life, and all the hardest aspects to it is that right and wrong become seemingly more difficult to differentiate on a multitude of issues. But we'll leave that for another day. But within these films, they very much set the standards in an early span of life in formulating an approach of how to differentiate between good and bad. And I think that's not a bad thing at all. That's not a bad thing at all. If you let your kids watch Disney at a very early age, some of them don't seem to stop, and that's where everyone buys the Disney park stuff, and that's another major issue of the Harry Potter thing, which again is another argument for another day. But it very much feels like a formulating aspect from the human condition to know that, well, that's bad, this is good. Treat people right, and they'll treat you right. And I think, yep, that's brilliant. But Ghibli comes at an age where you get deep into the animation style, and as you get older, you don't find these black and white A, B, and C parallels to your own life. In what the animation, let's say, has foretold. Yes, there it is in a fantastic fantasy element, and and it's grotesquely beautiful at times. But there's very much harder questions in the simplicity of, in my life, I've done a terrible thing, and that's not going to go away. I have to live with that, and it's difficult living with that as a human being. Trauma, uh, it's very difficult to process grief or process traumatic experiences or things that you did when you were young and it was shit. We've all done it, but some stuff is on larger levels than others. And granted, I think 90% of people are not going to go into this film and go, I also did that to my buddy in a jet plane, But I think it's also the sentiment that you let someone down. You let someone down who you cared about, and they might not be here anymore to understand that, and you've got to grow with that, and you've got to live with that. And it's interesting how it manifests as a curse here, because clearly this person is not a bad person. It's not a terrible person, but it is just the aspect of you have to carry a weight. And I think in life you carry as much as you can, and you try to get rid of it. But sometimes when you're walking up the mountain that is life, and not to get a fucking, not that we're in a fucking David Goggins or a personal one-on-one, like I'm not your personal trainer or your coach. I don't mean like that. I'm just talking like very basic entry level of this, and please forgive me. I don't want it to feel like you paid for a fucking course, but you carry up a mountain with a lot of weight, and as more you try to reach the peak, the mound of weight underneath it gets heavy to lift them. And I think it's just an interesting aspect in life, watching this and seeing something so beautiful and yet so quite dark and yet uplifting, because there's an idea that you can live with that, like just got to live life one by one, and what day by day, should I say, and just not brush past it, but work with it. And I think this film, that's the thing about Ghibli, is that it doesn't undermine its characters, it doesn't undermine its audience, and by not presenting things in black and white, I think it asks a perfect balance of the audience on a surface of just watching something and absorbing it like I did, and then you then have that wonderful ability of that it doesn't scold you or beat you over your head with an ideology or a formulaic type of narrative, but lets it just sit there and allows you, if you want to go and touch that second layer, it's there. I love that about it. I love that it's there for you or me or anyone to engage at our own digestible palate, however we want to do it. And it's the same with Grave of the Fireflies. It's the same with this, and I can imagine it's going to be the same. I'm loving because I've seen mid 2004 is Grave of the Fireflies, isn't it? And this is
Grave is like you're
earlier.
thinking Howl's Moving Castle.
That's it. Yes. What is
Graves is
98
I think, let's see,
or 2001, isn't it?
Is 88.
88.
Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh my god! Well, that goes to the animation style. I've seen 88. I've seen 93, and I've seen 2008, which is Ponyo. They're the earlier ones I've seen. So the one that I want to do next with you, if you'll have me on, that is, I'm hoping you will anyway. I'm so interested to know what the dynamic is, because I haven't seen them. I don't know. I don't have any frame of reference. I'm seeing late 80s and early 90s, and that feels like a very interesting time in the technological advancement that Miyazaki is facing, but also the generational one. It's a generation of trauma after World War II, where babies born during that era hitting 40s, they're hitting the 30s. They're coming to be people now who are buying houses, that are going into politics, who are owning businesses, who are in for the next generation, and the tens and the noughts and the tens, which I've seen about the climate change and stuff. So I'm fascinated to know what a 2021 Miyazaki film is going to entail. Where are we going with it? I find this whole thing that you're doing to be absolutely amazing. And again, more power to you for the seasons you put on here. The broadcast is terrific. But I'm so excited to see a filmmaker, how they're progressing this, and it's like 5 decades.
Yeah.
And I generally cannot believe that's from 1988. I may have said that in the pod. That to me is staggering, and it looks impeccable.
Oh, yeah,
terrific, absolutely terrific.
Fascinated to see what you'll think on that one. A few points that you mentioned I want to bring up. First, I'll just say, like, I think this film, out of probably most Studio Ghibli films, is one of the safest to put on with like friends or to show
Yes.
people because again, you can engage on your level on the outside. Very safe. If you just want to go have a fun time, you absolutely can. If you want to dive deep into all this, you absolutely can. Like it's so optional. I think it makes it really safe. But I think within this, and we talked about how he has this trauma and he talks about this inner soul. I think it's also this lovely story of redemption and just this conversation that this new generation is going to push forward no matter what, right? Like you have these new technicians, you have this young girl who's pushing these new ideas, who is taking control of the situation, but also like all of the struggles he faces with being a pig, which is the visual representation of his trauma and his shame.
Mhm.
Everyone around him still flowers him with love and still shows him love and doesn't judge him. She still supports him. She still is arguing for him. That is such an inner struggle for him and something holding him back. She even sees him past being a pig as she's laying there. She sees him as a human physically, which I think, again, that physical representation is so rich when you really dive into it. I found this to be a beautiful story of like, even if you have that trauma, even if you make these mistakes, even if you let someone down to this level, which I agree, I hope nobody has done this in a plane to the same degree. Also was like thinking as you were talking, could this be him reflecting on him as a father? Because I know him and his son has a lot of issues, and like that's a whole complex conversation we can get into another day. Wild. Him walking out of his son's debut feature film and saying it was shit to reporters as he's leaving the
Yeah.
screening early. Crazy. Um, but again, everyone around him is not holding him to that trauma or judging him for that trauma. And I just felt like this little story of redemption that you can always move forward. Also to be kind of pretty inspiring and rewarding. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, there's just so much here. I think on the outside, this is so overlooked. And I think a lot of people watch this. And I was listening or reading some reactions to the film from people who've seen it for the first time. And a lot of them were like, yeah, it's just kind of dumb fun. But like, no, there's so much here on the level. I think this is like a wonderful representation of the evolution of the animation genre. We talk about early Disney on here, the Cinderellas, the Snow Whites, and how simplistic those films were. And I think a lot of people listening might be like, why are you comparing them to that? It's apples and oranges. Those films were made 60, 70 years before this movie ever was made into production. For them, just making an animated film in general was a work of struggle, of stress, of unsureness. It feels like the animation industry for so long just kind of stagnated once it became seen this is what animation can do. And this is not a hot take at all. I mean, this is a very cold take, I'm aware, but it feels like Miyazaki really is the one who's pushing this, and Studio Ghibli as a whole is the one pushing this to say, what stories can we really tell in animation? How can we evolve the medium? In a way that is just super, super respectful. And again, he's going to continue to evolve it over and over again. Next week, we will be discussing The Boy and the Heron. Um, I Stunning. It's going to be us,
I can't wait.
Nick and Hillary, I believe, and I think it's everyone's first time except for me and maybe Nick. And y'all do not know what you are getting yourself into. Cannot wait for that conversation, and I hope everyone here joins us for that. I guess maybe before we wrap up, is there anything left, Jack, that you really want to get into about Porco Rosso?
There's only two things, and you sort of jumped on it there anyway. So I don't mind if you let me go on a little bit. But about the thing about him being a pig and about it being easy to watch, for an audience sake, just bang it on. I think that works really well. I think this film does a really good job of yes, he's a pig, but also without being naive, you could probably watch this and not even pick that up. Yes, it's referred
Yeah.
to on multiple occasions, but you can also think that's like a figurative thing, not a literal thing. And that's number one. I also think that's a really good little thing as well about being able to just watch it and not maximize on someone going, "Why is it a pig?
Yeah.
Why is it a pig? Why is everyone a human? Why is he a pig?" It's like if you're not going to interrupt the art, shut the fuck up, please. Either accept it or don't. I think that this film does a brilliant job of being able to go the two lines there. Like you can either get on board with that it's a pig or not even acknowledge it at all and still be able to watch this as a character study. And the second thing was throughout this film is how many times this character puts himself down saying, how can I don't have rights, I'm a pig. And I think it's an interesting parallel there to what this film is probably actually getting at, which is probably best that we come to it last. Is that because you mentioned about the issues of perhaps fatherhood, maybe it's a technological thing. I'd be fascinated to get our reading on it. It's also it's clearly not a literal thing. It could be. It could be a literal sense of that he feels a man at a time in '93 or '92 that feels like he's got everything, and it's not yet worth it. He doesn't feel like he's got everything, and he has. I think that's an aspect of like the actual vulgarity of a pig being overstuffing themselves and getting like that feeling of like a bit pigging out. Let's say. I think that's too slight for this. I do feel like it's a pig um, in a figurative sense of being in like a pig let in society and just being like the odd apple, like or like I think it's definitely a technological thing for me. I think if it's definitely like we're gonna go back, like we should be making these things. We shouldn't be going to like the next war is just the next war against the technological advancement. I think CD is burning up here. The DVDs on the horizon. If not, it's VHS. Like then you've got like obviously a few years later you've got the millennium. It's an interesting time because like in 2 years' time, well, a little bit earlier than this, I think Disney releases Toy Story, which just totally unravels the animation style to a sense of like wow, 2D and 3D. Like it totally changes the dynamic. Interesting to what's happening now with perhaps AI, but on AI is on a far larger scale. Whereas you could probably say it was the impending doom of the 2D animated style, and that it was regulated to be a side thing. And Disney only went back to Princess and the Frog, and then with Wish, which I think was an abysmal attempt at honouring its legacy. Um, but it was pushed to the side, and I think that this is probably his aspect of looking at him being the outcast in society by honouring a legacy or honouring those that are not there anymore, which I would presume would be the technology to do hand drawn animation. That's me reading into it. That's where I get it from. I feel like that's more sort of what he was going for. But I'd love to know your reading because I can't imagine it being a literal level of being greedy or that. That to me, no.
No.
I just think it's definitely an aspect of him feeling an outcast in a very beautiful, idyllic society and visualization of, you know, we should honor the past, and we shouldn't have to like fight another war and stuff like that. I don't know. I'd be fascinated to know what you think and how you read this because you're a Miyazaki stan. You've got the
True.
Twitter alt account
I got the
or
tattoo.
X, sorry.
I have the Ghibli tattoo on my ankle. Um,
Fair
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head as far as the generalized themes here. It really depends on what reading you want to put on this. I don't think the fact that it's an actual pig, as far as a creature choice, matters in any reading except, again, Miyazaki. Like for decades before this film, he always drew himself as a pig. He referred to himself as the pig. His house he refers to as like where the pig lives. Like I think that is him putting himself on screen. And when it was originally and maybe it is just a leftover when this was supposed to be just a 40-minute fun film and he was just like, what if I was a fighter pilot, right? Like it could just be that. But I think when you go into the conversation, whether it's the conversation on politics, whether or not it's the conversation on inner trauma, whether or not any reading you really want to give, the kind of objective stance here is that Porco Rosso is separated, is feeling isolated, is feeling like he does not belong with the other pirates, the other pilots in this bar. Whether or not you even want to claim it's just because he has morals and he's sticking to this code and he has honorable versus them who are greedy. That core emotion, no matter what you put on this, is kind of just the baseline for this film, and that is visually represented by him being a pig. But again, I don't think it's necessarily, if someone came out of this and was like, I think it was a pig because pigs are gluttonous, I just don't think that's the reading here. Like I think you're missing the mark. So I think you hit it perfectly as far as
It's too
that.
obvious, isn't it?
But right, I think everyone is going to come away from this film with their own reading of why does it matter that he's an animal? What is this curse? What does this represent specifically? But that's also being a great film, right? Everyone should go in and be able to engage. I love that there isn't a simple answer here. I love that there isn't just one thing this movie is about. Again, talking about the complexity of Miyazaki and the complexity of this film. I appreciate that. But I think you pretty much hit it there. With that, I think that's gonna do it for today's episode on Porco Rosso. I'm happy you love this film because again, I kind of fell in love. I always knew I liked this film, but like definitely confirmed this as a 5-star viewing this time around and with this conversation. If you want to stream Porco Rosso, widely available, as is all the Miyazaki films. Again, like I really recommend internationally, I believe they're all on Netflix. In the States, they're on Max. Like, go seek these films out. Go watch them. All of Studio Ghibli films, even beyond Miyazaki. These are great works of art. I'm happy we're going to cover a small sliver of them here. We're talking about Nausicaa, This, and Boy and the Heron. But there's still so much more there to get into. A Grave of the Fireflies, Totoro, Princess Mononoke, Howl's, Ponyo is gorgeous. Oh my gosh, I just rewatched Ponyo, and it was amazing to rewatch. There's so much within this filmography for the studio. And again, nobody is doing it like them. So I really hope that this inspires some people. And I think as you watch more of them, it only gets richer. You only get more of a comprehension of who Miyazaki is or who Isao Takahata is. And you can start to put little pieces together. And it just really is applause to them. So with that, that's going to do it for our episode on Porco Rosso. Jak, it has been a while since you've been on this podcast. We're going to end today with rapid reviews. Anything we've seen recently that we want to talk about. I am fascinated / terrified for what you're going to bring up today. So I would love to hear, what have you seen recently?
I promise you I wouldn't go into too much detail, so I'm going to be so quick. I'm not going to do them all because it's been a few weeks and it'd be frightening. But I'm just doing April Ghouls at the moment. I'm doing because I need that horror fix. I can't wait till September because in September I'm gonna because this is my 10-year anniversary of Letterboxd. I thought let's do 100 movies of horror, and I was like, no, fuck that. I'll do more. So I'm gonna do April Ghouls, and I've done Women in Film, which I'll touch upon here, and I'm gonna do Pride Month in June. Just get the films on the watch list, get them seen, and also get them out there to people who don't know about certain films like Kokomo City. Have you seen that? I think you have, haven't you?
Love it.
Wow. Oh, people. Like if I can just if someone just reads that review, I'm like, oh, I'd like to watch that. That to me is like yes, because that's what happened to me. Like I want to watch that film. And then I'm going to do September, this October, and then I'm going to do December of horror, and then I'm going to do November. So I'm doing a little bit of horror now. So I've done a lot of Hammer stuff, Dracula, Curse of Frankenstein. Both 35mm scans look extraordinary. I've been on a Vincent Price kind of thing. So I've done Abominable Doctor. Is it Phoebes or Fibes? I don't know. Hit that on its sequel. You'll love them. Price is so good, so fun. House on Haunted Hill, Witchfinder General, which is mortifying. The Masquerade of the Red Death, which is mortifying. Incredibly dark films. I did watch Mickey 17. I don't know if I told you this. I think I told Nick this. That I was meant to be on the podcast and I couldn't get a screening to it. And I was like, shit. And I remember going to work and listening to it. And then someone went, oh, can we get into spoilers? I was like, shit. And I turned it off and I watched it the day after. And I haven't listened to that podcast since because I know exactly what you two are going to say about it. I was so disappointed. I thought it was just 2 hours and 20 minutes of wasted time. That film has major issues in the edit, and you can tell that the issue before about not him getting final cut is because if you undoubtedly cut that down, it becomes nonsense. And then the only option is to put another 40 minutes on it, and you don't get anyone to see it, and it bombed anyway. And I think he put them in a really awkward position about trying to make this project, and I just don't think it had any conversation. It's very obvious what it's about, but it just had no dialogue to it. It had no. I just thought it was so flat and uninspiring. I watched Shocker from Wes Craven. Have you seen Shocker?
Never.
It's like a late 80s VCR version of A Nightmare on Elm Street by the same person, Wes Craven. Fascinating to watch. I watched a lot of Anthony Leroy stuff, friend on Letterboxd, Boom, Body Bag, Brain Bucket, really good short film filmmaker, fabulous. He's getting most of his stuff out there now anyway. at film festivals. But if you can watch it, message him, Anthony Leroy on X. Fabulous, really good VCR homemade stuff. I don't know if you've mentioned this, but Val Kilmer died early April, and I watched this. I watched The Saint to commemorate him, and Val Kilmer was massive in my house when I was younger. He's my sister's favorite actor. So in the late '90s and early 2000s, like he was just there, like Batman Forever, Heat, The Saint. Um, like he was like a fabulous actor. Deja Vu he was in as well with Tony Scott, rest his soul as well. And he's just like 60, like what age is that? Like, it's just terrible. Like, he's got two kids that are wonderful as well, and it's just shocking to find out. And I always thought The Saint was fabulous. I always loved that. It's very camp, but it's basically his Mission Impossible. I think it came out a couple of years, maybe the same year, maybe a year later. I think '96 is Mission Impossible, and it should have been his Tom Cruise vehicle. Like Tom Cruise takes Mission Impossible quite seriously, but with The Saint, Kilmer just takes it like on a really fun, camp and energetic ride, and he'll be really missed. I'll miss Val Kilmer, although I didn't do much to the end of his life because of his diagnosis and stuff like that. But just a
Have you
fabulous,
seen the documentary Val?
yes,
Yeah.
extraordinary. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. His son was narrating it. I thought it was him. I was like, how the fuck are they doing this? Really fabulous stuff. Very introversive, if that makes sense, or introverted of a person who was very often maligned as being difficult, but ultimately just, you know, just tough to find what he felt that wasn't being silly. But then the Eyes Wide Shut premiere came out. He's like, "What do you think it's about?" It's like, "It's about two people who don't want anyone to find out what they're doing." Like, he really dry sense of humor. But I watched Ida Lupino's Outrage, a 1950 film about a sexual assault victim. Um, Fascinating. It never even mentions the word, and it completely conveys the trauma, the horrific consequence and act. It's just terrifying to watch. Fabulous feature. I did watch Rose Glass's Love Lies Bleeding as well, which I thought was. I just thought, just one that is a sophomore curse. Just okay, like nothing on Saint Maud. Winter's Bone, fabulous. I did watch Thelma and Louise by Ridley Scott, which I thought was excellent as well. I
That was your
watched an
last one, right? That was your last Ridley
Oh no,
Scott? Oh.
I've got one left of Toner, which is No Way Out, Kevin Costner. I've got 1492, and
Okay.
I've got one more from him, I think, which is quite brutal.
Mm.
I don't want to think of that. Don't bring that up, please. We'll be there for when we do the Bee Gees biopic, or when he finally makes Blood Meridian, if that
Yeah,
ever happens.
we
So
will be.
we'll get there. We'll still be there for it. I did watch Honora, favorite film of last year. I thought it was excellent. I think she is a fucking
Hmm.
star. She's outstanding in that. It felt so like John Cassavetes. It's fabulous. I did my yearly Matrix. There's where we might go on a little bit here. But I did my Matrix trilogy because I wanted to watch women in film, and I watched them all in 4K. But I watched the first one. I've got a 35mm scan of it. Just fabulous. I'm not going to go on about it. I just thought it was fucking extraordinary. I thought it looked tremendous. I loved that film to pieces, and I was like, I have to watch the sequels. And Reloaded to me is like just a magnum opus. And I was watching it in 4K and in Dolby Atmos sound, and I just like what they got away with there. Like, that film's 22 years old, and it could literally survive now. It's just extraordinary piece of filmmaking. The third one, the end brawl, to me is outstanding. I almost tear up when Neo and Morpheus say the goodbyes. It's been an honor. The honor's mine. It's like, Jesus, and Carry On Moss. And then I did watch this. I did watch Resurrections, which I enjoyed. I still enjoy that. It's very difficult for me to get into it, but I liked it. I really did like it. It's the third time I've seen it now, and I'm warming up to it all the more. But yeah, there's 4K of watching Mitch Reloaded and watching the car chase. We're getting there. I'll be very quick now. I watched The Last Showgirl by Gia
Oh
Coppola. No, it's not. Is it not Gia Coppola? Is it?
no,
It
it's
is,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, it is.
I just thought it was just nothingness.
Sure.
I was really disappointed with it. I think she's very good in there. Um, but I just thought the film was like just watching something at the side and it having absolutely no opinion of it. I just thought it was very flat. Den of Thieves 2, I thought was really good compared to the first one. Colour me shocked. Uh, I did watch Better Man as well on the recognition of my mother. She went to the cinema to see it with a friend. I thought
Good.
that was wonderful as well.
Yeah.
I did not want to see that. I thought I don't really like Robbie Williams, but that was just something where I was like, oh shit, yeah, all that makes sense now. I just thought it was a fabulous, interesting, and obvious depiction with just so much weight to it. Kokomo City, must watch,
Yeah, it's great.
must watch about um, some trans sex workers and how they deal with the social stigma, cultural stigma, how the color of their skin affects their transness. So like engaging, incredibly entertaining, quite whimsical of how it's made from a filmmaker who was incredibly famous at one point, transitioned into a woman and was just left behind as well. Terrific, like a must watch for the trans story, or just to get insight into how that is, because it's difficult. I'm not, I can't, I can't dare to think of what that story's like. But that is the closest film I can think of to someone telling me that, and
Yeah.
listening to a woman who has transitioned, um, and also talking about how difficult it's being black. She's not considered to be a woman, and then she's not considered to be an aspect of black culture because she's transitioned. It's just an incredibly rich um, and invigorating story. Must watch. Watch Bottoms. No, I just thought it was terrible. I thought it was absolutely boring. Where are we going here? Well, I did watch some Jean Harlow thing, Redheaded Woman. Watched that. What else have I seen? What else? I'm almost there now. Let's have a look. No, that's about it. I tell you what, I'll end on one thing which I think you'll probably find funny. I don't think you've seen this. I don't know if you like this person or not. And it's not Sylvester Stallone. It's Dolly Parton. Have you ever seen Rhinestone?
I've never.
My wife is massive on Dolly Parton. She calls her Dolly. Like, I don't know who this person is. I'm not very aware of the Dolly Parton thing. But I was like, oh, we should watch it because I want to watch it for women in film. And also, it's just a thing I've heard people say it's horrific, and it is. It's bad. It's very bad. But we watched it last night, and obviously she lives away from me, so it was a date night, and I couldn't help but think I fucking really like that film. If you went and watched the Jojo Siwa film
Yeah.
with your friend, and you sometimes you watch the you watch the other things, right? Pull that on, right? It's an hour and 45 minutes, and it's hilarious. It's Sylvester Stallone trying to be in a Mike Nichols film and not realizing that Mike Nichols is not directing that film, and he's like shouting and screaming, trying to be a rock star, and Dolly Parton's trying to teach him to be a country star for a bet, and it's so stupid, but there are bits in it where it's like this is really fun, and it's not as bad as people think it was. And it was a wonderful night we had, just laughing at it, and just like eating chocolate. And it was just a perfect little dinner. And I just anyone out there, go watch Rhinestone because it's better than any MCU bullshit you've seen in a while. I've yet to see Sinners. I was going to go watch that tomorrow. I've yet to see Warfare, but Civil War, I'm not. I cannot do the Alex Garland thing anymore. I'll let you do
Yeah.
that now. But
No,
that's
I
all I've watched.
don't.
There's all of the random shit. My Bloody Valentine. I've watched loads of other shit, but that's my main stuff. So I'm sorry that took so long, but I
No,
haven't
that's
seen you in
great.
ages. But I'm hoping now that you've got some good stuff to hit me with.
Well, we'll see. I will say Rhinestone added to my watch list. You don't have to convince me. I think I'll love it. Also, no way in hell am I checking out Warfare. I don't know why Alex Garland so quickly went from someone I was so excited for, who I love, just like I cannot do Warfare either. Like, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
shocking, isn't it?
I did catch up with some new releases we'll talk about. I caught up with Companion that came out in January. I don't know if you saw
Ooh.
this one. It was fun. It was kind of like I think a very like in the middle Black Mirror episode where like if you were with friends and they threw this on, you could watch it and be fine, but you're not going to get like anything great from it. I would never like recommend like, hey guys, we got to watch this. Some good performances, but pretty in the middle for me. I watched what's it called? The Woman in the Yard, from the same director as Carry On, Orphan, Black Adam, Jungle Cruise. He's a very hit or
Brilliant.
miss director, right?
All right, yeah, okay.
Did not like this one at all. I think some people are being a little bit unfair because they're trying to be like, it's pro suicide. And I think if you get that message from it, you really are not necessarily reading the very basic film. There were some interesting visual ideas here, but overall I found this to be tedious. I found it to be boring. I found it to be pretty. Someone who is probably someone's trying to make a statement on depression and suicide and is not necessarily um thinking wisely about what he is making within that, is just kind of is going in and rushing this project, and it didn't really have the substance. It feels like a
Okay.
really bad Fantasia film. It feels like one we would have watched at Fantasia and been like, not good, but I guess
Yeah.
it's Fantasia. So pretty disappointed by that. But the two I really enjoyed, both new releases this week. I'll start with The Wedding Banquet from Andrew On, same person who made Fire Island,
Oh
who made
wow.
Driveways. Remake of Ang Lee's The Wedding Banquet. I've not seen Ang Lee's film, but I know there are some plot differences between the two. I found this to be so charming. I absolutely love this. I think Andrew On is very quickly becoming one of my favorite queer directors right now. How he captures the nuance of the queer experience, both like the very unique traumas and trials of the queer experience, but also with the joy that comes with being queer in the queer community. Super fun. Lily Gladstone is obviously excellent here. Kelly Marie Tran has the best performance of her career here. I'm so happy to see her back after all the Star Wars stuff
Mm,
and her coming out this week. Great for her to feel empowered to do that and feel safe
mhm.
enough to do that when the public has been absolute shit to
Yeah,
her, whether or
terrible.
not you like her in Star Wars. I thought this was really, really charming, so I enjoyed it. But Ryan Coogler's Sinners is undoubtedly like the highlight of the week. I'm not going to say it's 5 stars. I do have some issues with it. The first hour is like easily 5 stars, though. It is Ryan Coogler's probably best effort to date. That first hour is a super, super complex and layered look at the power of money, race in the South, the power of music. There's one scene in this halfway through that is genuinely easily going to be the best scene of the year with how it uses music. I don't even want to spoil it, but it really is like a fall in love with cinema again type scene. And then the vampires show up. And it's not that the vampire stuff is bad here. It's quite compelling. It's fun. He adds some really great lore to the vampire mythology and how he shows it on screen. It just feels like we've gone from this really, really focused drama that was super compelling, super complex, super thoughtful, to losing that connective tissue and losing that focus, and then going into a good but not necessarily excellent vampire feature. A film of 3 different sections. First section incredible, second section really fun, third section definitely rougher right before the credits hit. So
Oh wow.
I don't
Okay.
know if you're referring to that or something else, but overall though, good, really good. Like
Mm.
definitely go see it. It's my favorite film of the year so far. In a pretty rough year though. I mean, like Mickey 17, I don't know your thoughts on it. I genuinely think it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life.
Oh
Like it's
wow.
on that level for me. So 2025 has not been kind, but Sinners is definitely like a breath of fresh air. This is really good. Hopefully the summer just keeps going, and we will be able to talk about some more great cinema here on the pod. As I mentioned, next week we're reviewing Boy and the Heron. Cannot wait, Jack. Then May we have some fun little releases, kind of no connective tissue, but we're going to be reviewing a Star Wars film I will tease, one I'm very excited to get into, and then just some random stuff. And then we get into June, which will be Pride Month, and then we're going to be reviewing various releases tied to the LGBTQ plus experience. And then we just go through the summer, and it's a big summer with some big films. So I'm excited to get into Jurassic World. We'll talk, I'm sure, about Superman or something. Um, Nick, I'm sure is going to be biting. Can we do Ballerina? We need to do John Wick Ballerina. I'm sure he's thrilled about that
Yeah.
news. So I'm sure we'll get into all that eventually. But thank you so much for joining us for Porco Rosso and this entire Miyazaki series. Jack, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on X and Twitter, where I don't really post anything. I just go on there to see what's happening. With the username at Jak-Luke Sharp, you can find me on Letterbox and Clapper with my name as well at Jak-Luke Sharp. I'm just going through the motions, but I'll be doing, like I said, women in film. Just finished Black History Month, Pride Month. We're going to do in June. I'm going to be on this every other weekend. I can do as well with work slowing down. So thank you very much for having me. It
No,
was a pleasure to spend my evenings with you. I
yes.
love it, and to listen to someone speak so warmly about Studio Ghibli just gives me that little scratch to wanna watch more of it. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you. Some weeks it's easy to talk about the film. Also, now might be a good time. I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot here, but I know
Oh, sure.
Clapper has some.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you want to get involved.
Yeah, we're gonna open up the reviewers a little bit more. So if anyone wants to contact I'm gonna have to remember the email address, but it's the username is Clapper Ltd at gmail.com. I think that's it. I'm gonna have to double check there.
I will make
But
sure
if
the
you
correct one's in the description below. But
Yes, please. But email there for a bit more information. But we're going to open the site up to some more to inexperienced or new reviewers, and anyone out there thinking, I don't know, I'm not. I can't, just send something through. Trust me, it's easy, it's fun. You'll get published. We always send back edits just so you know how to do it and stuff like that. And there's a lot more um, to learn by it as well. Um, it's an interesting career to go through, but also you'll get feedback of just how to formalize a review to a better standard, and also just push a little bit back. Excuse me, just to push a bit back towards you about what you can coax out of yourself in terms of highlighting things. There's a lot of people that watch film on the surface, and there's something in there that they want to talk about or express themselves, and just don't know what to touch upon. They don't know why a scene or a sequence or something touches them in a certain way. And what we really wanting to do, it's not really about the writing per se, it's just getting about you, and this is what this podcast is so brilliant for, about expression, is that you'll start to realize of why they use certain elements of score, why there's certain color, why a film edits and cuts on the same way, why does it fade in, why does it fade out, and you'll pick these up when we start to help you review. And how you'll read films will be far more progressive in a sense of you'll be able to deconstruct it. But the most important is you'll be able to express yourself. So, and anyone who's struggling with that, just send a review over. You don't have to send anything 1,000 words. Sending up to 300 words, something like that. Send it to us. Um, I usually go through it, but we'll edit it, send it back, have a chat about it. It's nothing to make anyone feel embarrassed. It's nothing to make anyone feel inferior. It's just working to try get to a better standard. And it's just better to get it published. You've got out there. You've got your name on a review that'll sit somewhere forever. And you don't have to just review on Letterboxd. You can review on Clapper. This is a great site as well, if I may say so myself. We've got some great writers here. We've got some great personalities, and also you may find that writing is not an expressive about film. You might want to come and talk about it. And this and Uncut Gems is something that I love talking about, because there's only so much I can express myself in words where I don't go into but my own arse territory, and just to get someone else's opinion to explore mine, I find so beneficial. And I know that's sort of counterintuitive because me and Carson, I'm almost like one of the same, and that's purely coincidental. But there's nothing to that, I promise anyone. But I'll go on Uncut Gems and I'll get someone reading a film like Spike Lee, and I'll be like, what?
yeah.
Like, wow. And just here, listen to someone express themselves about Studio Ghibli, who loves them, who adores them, to me, who's very much a newcomer. It's all about just wanting to get educated, and it all being really fun. So send an email to Clapper Ltd at gmail.com. I think that's it. But please read the description, because I know I've got that fucked up. I know I have. And just send something through. You don't have to feel that you can just send 500 words. Send 300 words. Your standard is going to be totally different from other people. You may think you're a good reviewer. Send it anyway. You may think that we'll never read it. Send it anywhere. And yeah, we're just going to open up the polls a little bit and get some more reviews out there. So yeah, but anyone who wants to contact, either leave a message or whatever, and we'll get back to you. But feel free to do so. Don't be scared. That first jump always feels the biggest, and then after a while, it just feels like a tiny step. So please come back, and we'd love you to be on board. And again, thank you, Carson, for letting me indulge on
Oh
a little
no,
bit in my
it's
inside
great.
corner. You can be like this, yeah.
You don't have to be that though.
Yeah,
That's
you
not
don't have. You don't
required.
have to have two glass posters, but it is better to do that.
Well, if you do though, like just know we will like you a little bit more.
Yeah, you are a stan. And any Star Wars reviewers, get them in. Come on. Any MCU stuff. We're not like that. We all joke about it, but
Oh yeah.
send it in. Don't be afraid to.
Reviews, features. I mean, I love Clapper because some things I write and I'm like, no one would ever publish this or host this. And then Clapper will take it, and it's just great free form of expression.
Look,
So highly recommend anyone come in.
I did a 1,200 word feature about Gus Van Sant's Psycho, about saying how that film is a 5-star film, about the ideology of an author, and it sounds on the surface like a stuck-up piece written by a stuck-up piece of shit. But honestly, I found it one of the most invigorating pieces to write because I was writing it. I was finding something of why I appreciated something that other people didn't, and that's the beauty about film. You might like one artist, another one might not
Hmm.
like it, and finding that middle ground, or just writing in a passionate or just an educational manner. To me, that's like crack. So please, not endorsing that at all, but just feel free to just get out there and write. We do video stuff as well. We can always get back into that. It always just took a step back because everyone really likes to do the podcast, and it's so much easier to do this. It's so much more fun. We can also do video essays, features. Feel free, come up with some wacky stuff.
Yeah.
Review one of the. How much more is a letterbox review compared to a Clapper review? What, 200 more words? It's nothing. It really isn't. Just push yourself. There's nothing. If you don't like it, no one's going to come email you and ask for anything more. Just see how you get on with it. You might enjoy it, you might not. And we always take care of people anyway. So yeah, feel free. Yeah, I'd appreciate it anyway.
Yes, I agree. So you can email that again, description below. If you have any issues, you can contact Jack or myself on Twitter or Blue Sky, and I'm sure we can figure
Yeah,
it
on
out.
Letterbox as well. Just leave a comment if you want to. Yeah.
Totally. With that, you can find me on Blue Sky and Letterboxd, just Carson Timar, working on some features. I know I've said it a couple weeks in a row, but I'm really like locking down this week, writing a piece comparing, contrasting Kelly Reichardt's Old Joy with the Blair Witch Project and how they view nature in each film and how
Wow.
interaction between a man and nature. I'm writing it this week. I'm telling myself like that's the plan. So
Can I
gonna
give you?
get into that.
Tell you what, I promise, because you've mentioned that I'm going to promise something as well. I'm going to do a feature. I don't know when, but I'm going to write it because I keep on saying it. I'm going to do one about the Wachowski stuff. I'm going to because trans invisibility is coming up, or it's either just happened. I'm going to do that as well, which also feels quite strange for me to do that because I'm not trans, and B, that's not a part of society that I'm from. But I just want to get that out there. I love those two filmmakers, and if I can do anything about highlighting their work and especially the cinematic work, that'd just be a gift I can give to anyone who doesn't think that deserves anything like that. I wouldn't mind doing that. But I'm going to write one about A Nightmare on Elm Street about its comments about maybe about climate change. I was thinking about the other day about seeing it.
Ooh.
Yeah, there's something about that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to read yours, and I'm going to get wacky this year with mine. I think I'm going to do
Yes.
it because I need to do Tony. I need to do Ridley Scott's feature about Alien Covenant, and I need to do that about cancer, which is uh, unfortunately torn a lot of people from him in his life. So I want to do something like that and see of how to accept grief as well. But we won't get too dark into it. I'm
Right.
very excited with yours. That's a crazy one. It's
Thank
a
you.
crazy one. But hey, Psycho 1998. I've been there. I've gone there. I've spent time where I
there
probably shouldn't have done.
there are times when you're watching a film, and this was me watching Old Joy, where like another film, random like Blair Witch, will just come into your mind. And I think a lot of the times writing features or just any emotion doesn't have to be comparing to a film. You watching a movie and get
Mhm.
something so strongly from it. I think writing a feature is such a brilliant way to
Very
like. It feels
therapeutic.
very yes, exactly. It feels like you get so
Mm.
much out of it, really expanding and really diving deep into it. I loved my whole James Cameron retrospective article about how he uses water in his films. Like just everything. Like if the idea pops up, I'm that type of person who wants to get it out. So
I think I did. I,
I love
I
it.
I don't know if this is. I'm trying to get this edited, but it's very tough. I've done a feature on Joker 2 of how it basically goes back at those who like the first one and morally questions why would you like that, which is I find fascinating for a film very much like Matrix Resurrections to twist its own audience and about on itself and ask them why are you enjoying this? What are the reasons for it? And I think we've tried to go through it 3 times, and my wife who helps me with it is like, why would you do this? Why are you writing about this? Like, why do you want to write about the incel culture? But I just find that so interesting about that film. And I
Yep.
think if you look, not to get into that, we'll get into a different day. But again, yeah, I completely get. Not that writing about
Yeah.
incel culture is therapeutic for me, or anything, but just to look at film in a different way, a bit like almost like behind glass, and just seeing it
Mm,
be embossed or emboldened in a different viewpoint, I think is fascinating. But
yeah.
don't feel afraid, anyone out there, not to be able to express that. You
Yes.
live and you learn. I mean, I read some from 2016 on my shit, and I'm like, that's not me. I'll edit that on the sly. It's all about building. It's all about working towards
Yeah.
getting better to it. And your work in particular, I love reading your stuff. I love reading Jakob stuff. I like
Yes. I
bold,
love reading
crazy
yours. Yeah.
shit. Yeah, I just like stuff like that. Like the cat stuff. It's been put on ice a little bit, but it's coming back. It's
The
coming back.
poster's there, isn't it? You
Yeah,
know, it's
it's
alive.
been staring at me. It's not winked at me once throughout this. It's quite strange.
My final plug will be Uncut Gems podcast. I was on the episode for Certain Women. We had a Patreon review of
Oh,
it, myself
wow.
and Hillary. One of my favorite episodes we've ever recorded of ClapperCast. But if you want a little tease of that, plus also Jakob and Randy's, brilliant commentary, we had a really fun episode there. So I would highly recommend that. Also, more Reichardt, just, endless. I think Reichardt is one of my favorite stories of this year, is me falling in love with that filmmaker and that filmography. So just creating more content for that and really deep diving into it. With that said, I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for joining us to discuss Porco Rosso. Again, we'll be back later this week on Patreon with a Sinners review, and then we'll be reviewing The Boy and the Heron next week. With all that said, thank you so much. Goodbye.